Hi, I'm Robert Brock and I work for KDAB. Last year we recorded an interview with Bruno Caudoin, the founder and creator of J'ai Compris, which is the free open source educational software for children aged 2 to 10. You can find the resulting video in the links below. Now, J'ai Compris was originally written in C and Python using GTK Plus Widget Toolkit, but a rewrite in C++ and QML using the Qt Widget Toolkit was initiated by Bruno in 2014. As he explains in the previous video, when Bruno's circumstances changed, he passed on the maintainership of J'ai Compris to Timothée Guide and Johnny Jazet. In this interview, KDAB's Francis Tate talks to Tim and Johnny to pick up the story.
So thank you for joining me, gentlemen. It's really, really nice to see you. I wonder if you could begin by telling us a little bit about what drew you to J'ai Compris in the first place, before you even started thinking about contributing. What interests you about this software?
For me, it started in 2014. That at the time I was a very active contributor to Krita, the painting application from the KDE community, and so I attended the Academy Conference, which is the yearly meeting of the KDE community, and there I could meet Bruno Caudoin, the creator of J'ai Compris and previous maintainer, and he was in the process of migrating J'ai Compris to the KDE community at that time. And I already knew J'ai Compris before meeting him, but one thing that I noticed is that the biggest issue was the graphics were not very good, to say the least. It was all random images with no consistency at all. So when discussing, I asked him if he would be interested to get me to work on redoing all the graphics, and he was very interested. So that's how that meeting started.
So you were basically drawn to it because the software itself didn't look right for you.
Yes, exactly.
But you didn't have kids, you didn't have a school, or you weren't.
I didn't have
about
kids that time, no. But I was very deeply into free software because I believe in the values behind free software, and one of the things I want to do is I aim to work only on free software and to improve that side. And especially there's not many graphic artists who are contributing to free software, so I knew it would be a very good way to help.
That's great. Bruno must have been very happy. Well, what about you, Johnny? What drew you to it in the first place?
At first, I was interested on the educational part, because when I was younger, I wanted to be a teacher. And then I learned I have to wake up early, so I changed my plans. But so I think sharing knowledge is really important. So that was the first step that drew me. And I know before it was on Qt, it was on GTK. I also wanted to start, but I didn't know the library and the languages, or less than C++ and Qt. So I didn't step on it. And in 2014, when Bruno published an article on a French website, linuxaffaires.org, where he told that he was rewriting the software to Qt, then I contacted him on IRC, and I started to do a few activities to port from the old version to the new version. And also at that time, I started to add Nofuse. So it was a good way to provide them open source software without any advertisement or bad intention behind the software. It's really just an educative software, no addiction, nothing to no violence, no just educational. So it was really important for me to have something like that, because nowadays we really have a lot of software that tries to advertise other things, or and it's not really helping for people. So,
It's very distracting, apart from anything else.
yeah.
But it's a matter of great concern to me anyway. I think I find it very worrying. So yes, so I think you both mentioned 2014. Is that right? So does that mean that's when you both took it on, as it were, took it on your shoulders?
That's when we started, but yeah.
It's when you started. Okay, so when did you take over the responsibility from Bruno? When did he hand it all over to you? A few years after, or?
It was the summer 2016.
Yes,
Okay.
because at that point, it was the first time he called me, and we discussed about the future. He started a new work, and he was asking if I was okay to take on my side the technical part, and for Timothée, at the time it was the commercial part and the graphical part. So it was 2016 where we took over the mentorship of the software.
And you share most of or quite a lot of the tasks, I understand it, if that's correct. But how do you manage that? How do you, because I mean, you've got a full-time job, haven't you, Johnny? And I'm not sure about you, Timothy. You certainly probably did have at the time, but now I think you're supported by the Patreon funding.
Yeah. For me, my work on JCompris now is part of my regular work, because I get some financial support through Patreon. So I dedicate on average 1/3 of my working time to it. But I also have to sometimes answer messages during the evening by mail or on the chat.
And Johnny, you must do all of it in the evening, do you?
Mostly on evening and on morning before going to work. For example, this morning we have a French contributor that is working on a new activity, and usually is only around on mornings. So that's when we have time to discuss about what he wants to do, how it fits in JCompris.
Okay, because this is your special Wednesday day that you don't work. Okay.
But then from when I wake up and I go to work, I have the computer on, and if I have something to do on JCompris, I do it there too.
Okay. That's quite a big commitment for both of you, isn't it? I mean, how much of your time do you think it takes, Johnny?
It depends on the weeks, because when we have a release like recently, it takes more time because we have to contact translators, make sure everything is okay, we don't miss anything. When some translators commit directly on the KDE, but others are less technical. So we have to handle a bit more by taking the file they translate and handle them ourselves. So, I mean, it could go to more than 10-hour weeks. And on small weeks, when I have a lot of work or friends or other things, it's more 2 or 3 hours by week.
Okay.
On my side.
Well, I'm sure the community's going to have to be grateful for that. I'm sure it is.
And then regarding the sharing of the task, it's really depends, because on my side, I'm more technical. So even on the pedagogical parts, Timothée and Emmanuel, another French teacher contributor, are more able to answer the question if it really fits on JCompris.
For the educational part, I'm not a school teacher, but in my work time I do some graphics teaching and development teaching, so I have that kind of point of view. And my wife also, all her family, they are all teachers, so I can get a lot of feedbacks when I have some doubts.
And what is nice about that is that they are in India, so we don't have only the French opinion. It's
you get a wider perspective.
Yes,
Exactly.
it's knowledge share around the world, and it's not a specific tool for France or Europe.
I was going to ask you, Johnny, as the technical lead, if there were any specific challenges, and it sounds to me as if you just described one of them, which must be, well, perhaps it's not a technical thing, I don't know, but
Yes.
to be able to get everybody to contribute different languages, how do you decide when you've got enough? I mean, have you got like a mandatory number of languages that you translate it into?
For the translation part, it's handled within KDE. So we have the luck to have the translators for all the KDE activity that can participate.
Okay, all KDE members.
It's
How
not,
wonderful.
yeah, it's really a big community. We gain a lot from it. So, for example, I'm going to say half of the languages are done by translators that usually translate KDE. And the other part are people from countries that are not part of KDE that just send me the files and I have to handle them. We have a documentation on how to translate, what we have to translate, how to handle the file. So it's something we have to keep in mind and to share with people, because usually people that don't know open source or software a lot, they might want to help, but they don't know how to contact, what to do, and it may be overwhelming, and they decide to not contribute. So it's not good. We have to share and have an easy workflow.
We can put some links below this video when it's finished to help people to find the right kind of places for that sort of thing if they think about contributing. I wondered about the what the biggest challenge was for you on the technical side.
It's handling the new version of Qt, I think, because we support a lot of platforms, so Linux, Android, Windows, and macOS. And on Android, there are a lot of changes often that are not easy to handle. And we have to change the workflow, the work build, to make sure it still compiles, we don't forget anything. Recently, for example, there was a limitation on the size of the package. It was not supposed to do more than 100 megabyte. And we had to do tests because as we have a lot of activities and it's really graphical, we have a lot of image and it takes a lot of space. And we decided to change the format of the image from PNG to WebP, and we gain like 30% of the size. So now we have less stress about the size of the package. Qt on that is helping us a lot because it's a plugin on Qt that handles the different formats. But we had to do tests on how we could reduce the size. And if I remember correctly, the initial subject that helped us to change was a contributor from Norway, I think, that wanted to provide new graphics for one of the activity. And it is a lot of background images, so big images. And he wanted to provide new images that were of better quality. And as we saw, it was complicated to add new images without breaking the size of the package. We had to find this way to both improve the quality of the image and reduce the package size. So it was a win-win.
It's been quite a learning challenge for everybody.
Yeah.
And that's a quite nice way to segue over to you, Timothy, and ask you more about, you're the graphic designer and project lead, or UX leader, I think you called yourself.
Yes.
So what does that entail?
It's a wide topic. For all the graphic part, I do most of the time. I do all the graphical assets for all the activities. So that's how I started working on JCompris. And so because we have a lot of activities, and now we are getting close to 200. So it's very big work. I'm actually almost finishing redoing the graphics of existing activities, because there's always new ones every year. So I prioritize working on new ones when they arrive. And then when it's more calm, I keep working on the old activities. So redoing all those graphics. And for the UX part, it's more about the interactions of the activities, how children are supposed to use them. And for that, every time there's a proposal for a new activity, I discuss with the contributor about how it should work and get his ideas and give some suggestions how it could be improved. And in the end, I also test while he's developing to make sure everything is working correctly. And in the end, I almost always redo a pass to clean up all the layout and make sure that it's responsive, because we support that many platforms and form factors. All the layout must work both on a huge widescreen, but also on small phone screens, so with different ratio. So every time I have to adapt the layout to make it work everywhere. And that is a tricky thing, and most developers will not be able to do it correctly. So usually I just ask them to make the activity functional for a regular desktop screen, and then I adapt.
Yeah, having things on mobile phones was a game changer, wasn't it? It seems to have been real difficult for everybody.
It is.
But in a way, there's a couple of things that come to mind there. One, to me anyway, one of them is, do you allow other people to contribute graphic designs as well, suggestions or at least, or do they actually?
Of course, like the example Johnny gave, when someone wanted to provide a new backgrounds for an activity, I reviewed and selected which could go or not, but it's free. But it still has one of the first thing I did when I joined the project was to create some visual guidelines to make sure that all the graphics fit together. And so there are two parts for the graphics. Most of the graphics are made in vector, in SVG format for illustrations and all the graphical interface. And for this, there's very specific guidelines. And in some activities, there are photos. And for photos, I don't have specific guidelines. Like that contributor wanted to add some new photos, so it was easier for him to find new photos, and that would fit good. But for creating illustrations, vector illustration that fit the guidelines, I'm more picky, and it's very rare to find a graphical artist who is willing to work on drawing assets for free for JCompris. So I'm more than welcoming, but it's rare to. In practice, there's not much people who.
Do you have tools that you can help them to do that, to enable them to contribute, or?
There's not really tools. I mean, for people who want to create new activities for the development part, we have all the
basic templates. Images.
Yeah, basic templates and some reusable components, and they can reuse for the graphical part, they can reuse all the images that are already inside JCompris, or just use placeholders with simple shapes, and then I will work on the final result.
Usually on open source, it's more developers, and in all the projects, it's difficult to get graphical artists, musical artists to contribute for free. I
That's
don't know
interesting.
exactly the origin of why. Maybe it's because we started developing. Linux was started, and it take a lot. So, and people that draw or did music before, it was already on a different mindset. I mean. And so I know it's developers we find a lot because we find there are a lot. For example, students that want to discover or to improve themselves. It's really easy to start on an open source project and to learn a lot easily because there are a lot of professional developers that also develop on their spare time on open source projects. So to share the knowledge, it's really great for new developers to do open source because of that. On the graphical side or musical side, I don't know. It's different.
Well, artists in general have a rough time, I think. It's much harder to make a living. So probably they don't want to give anything away because they've been ripped off so much. I mean, talking of the friends of mine that I know of, I mean, that's certainly one of the things I hear a lot, but I don't know. In the world of graphic design, perhaps that's different. I don't know. I should ask you instead of trying to guess.
Yeah, there's really a different culture on that topic because it's also, I can see about, let's say for the tools, like I said, I also work only with free software tools as a graphic artist. And honestly, there's more than enough to do a good job, but all the, usually all graphic artists, when they go to learn how to work in schools or well, high schools, and they will be trained on proprietary software, and they will be taught that they have to use those proprietary software, else they're not professional, which is totally wrong. But with that mentality, they don't get the idea that they can use free tools and then in return provide free content. For developers, they know that nowadays the developers, it's mainstream to use free software, and open source is the norm. So.
But yes, as Timothée said, it's really a cultural thing because even in schools, there is a lot of lobbying to use Apple tools or Windows, Microsoft tools, and we don't learn about open source. On my side, it was on high school where there was a lot of use of Linux and open source, and that's where I learned. But I know on some school, it's we have iPads. How can we get jQuery on it? And there are issues with the license that does not allow us to provide jQuery on iPad. So we do a bit of teaching or at least discuss with them to know if it's possible to move on their side only on Android tablets, for example.
So how do you see jQuery evolving in the future? What's your thoughts about that? Have you thought about it at all, or do you just take it as it comes?
I think the biggest plan is what we call internally the server tool, which is not really a server, it's more like an application that would allow teachers to communicate in a local network with device running jQuery, so they could manage the whole class and send their own exercise and specific activities to the children, and they would get feedback from the results and the progress of the pupils. So that's a long-standing project that we got started, and will take some time to finish and get ready. But
it's a tool to help the teacher, because we had feedbacks. Because when they put tablets or computers on the end of the children, but they can't have any feedback. So what we want is to provide a tool that will allow them to tell you have to work on this activity, then this activity, then this one. We get the feedback of what you input. For example, it's an activity to learn about the multiplication. So there are 2 times 7 and the child type 15. So it's not good. So it will be returned to the teacher computer. And at some point, what we really want to try to do is to have this displayed graphically. And this way the teacher can see that on this session, there was 5 children. 3 of them had issues with the table of 3. So next time we can customize or discuss more with the children about this difficulty.
Because in the first place, Gcompris is more an application for children to learn, but that kind of tool could make it a tool for a helper for teachers to teach, which is a bit different.
Yes, indeed, indeed. So, I mean, some of the people who might watch this might never have heard of this, any of this at all. Is there anything else you can think of that they might be interested to know about, or that you'd like to just tell them about this?
About Gcompris? Or well, there's some stories I could share that someday some teacher sent me an email. They were telling me that they were very grateful to Gcompris because they had some pupils who were completely lost. They were very lagging behind the others, and they could not follow the class anymore. And so they just gave them a computer with Gcompris for a few weeks. And after that, they were able to catch up and recover from their lag, and that was really blowing their mind. They were, wow, thank you. And in the same idea, I know that Gcompris is used in a lot of places to help children with disabilities, because as there's no advertisement and all the graphics are carefully made to not be distractive, and it's really relevant and efficient for them to learn.
That's marvelous.
And it's also used by people with disabilities, but not children, older people.
Yeah, also.
So for example, to learn how to use the mouse or the keyboard or everything. So.
Yes, I noticed that when I was looking through the library. I was thinking, so that's also for adults, why not? Yes, excellent. Well, that's great. That's really very interesting. Thank you so much for joining me today, both of you. We'll see you again, I'm sure.
Thank you. Bye.
Yes, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.